what happened under Reagan is that he inherited an economic situation under Jimmy Carter where we had stagflation. So the economy was stagnant, yet we had massive inflation. In the early 80s, interest rates to get a mortgage were 17, 18, 19%. So in order to get the economy moving again, interest rates had to come down. And as you know, the Fed, in part, can raise or lower some interest rates. The discount rate, the federal funds rate. Reagan is really known for cutting taxes. He had two massive programs where he cut taxes, and the thought behind that, it's called trickle-down economics, that if you cut taxes for businesses, that ultimately they will spend more money on capital, economic capital, and that will lead to lower prices and higher employment. So unemployment should fall, and so what you're talking about with deregulation is that when you move the supply curve to the right, that will lead to lower prices. And one way to move the supply curve to the right is by cutting taxes and cutting regulations. But regulations are there for a purpose. I mean, you want to make sure that your food is safe, that your medicine is safe, that the airplane that you fly in on vacation has been inspected. So just by getting rid of regulations might sound really nice because they're cumbersome and a burden to businesses, but they are there for a purpose. And so the question is which regulations are redundant and unnecessary versus which are the ones that are vital. I make the analogy that deregulation is like riding a bike without a helmet. It might feel a lot better, on a hot day, you're not sweating as much, and it's big, it's annoying to have that helmet on you, but it's there for a purpose. And if you do get in a bike accident, that helmet will protect you. So no one's saying that regulations are fun, they're enjoyable, but they're there for a purpose. And you're right, without regulations we could have corruption, we could have a lot of problems in the society that regulations are supposed to protect us from. And there was mixed reviews with this because yes, taxes were cut, yes, incomes did go up over that decade between 1980 and 1990, but our federal budget ballooned. So on one hand, yes, economic stimulus occurred, but at what cost? A much larger federal deficit. And in fact, Reagan actually had to go back and raise taxes during his administration because tax receipts coming into the federal government were so low that it wasn't plausible to continue that. It wasn't feasible. Debt will ultimately hamper our ability to grow our economy because if the interest payments on our federal debt become larger and larger, those dollars have to be used to spend on the interest payments on that debt versus spending it on infrastructure or public projects that could directly employ people, lower unemployment, put money in people's pockets, and increase consumption, which is 2/3 of our GDP. Well, this goes back to what I said in the beginning, is that you have to look at both sides of it and then interpret what's good and what's bad. Debt, really, you can look at it one way, that it's not a problem so long as we're able to pay the interest on our debt, and our debt itself is a certain percentage of our GDP. Our debt payments are roughly 7% of our GDP, which is manageable at this point. But if we ever have a contraction, if we ever go into a recession, those debt payments are not going to go away, and they will be a larger percentage of our GDP. That's when it becomes a problem. So as long as we have economic growth and the percentage of our debt relative to our GDP stays stable, it doesn't seem to be that much of a problem. But the other side of the coin is that some people say, well, $21 trillion, we're in debt up to our eyeballs. That's unsustainable. You can look at it that way too. Well, if you think about the government and what they have in their toolkit to fix recessions, right? They have monetary policy, which is done by the Fed, and they have fiscal policy, which is enacted by Congress. The Fed has a role, and monetary policy is a lot quicker than fiscal policy. Fiscal policy, you suffer from the administrative lag, the recognition lag. So there's a lot of problems with fiscal policy that you don't have with monetary policy. Monetary policy can go into effect immediately, and you can see the effects relatively immediately. And the things that monetary policy can do, you can control interest rates, specifically the discount rate, and the federal funds rate, as you know, and you can control the money supply. The Fed speaks, the market moves. They're arguably the most powerful person. We have our current Fed chairman, Jerome Powell. When he speaks, the market will move. So if they decide they want to raise interest rates, that will put the brakes on an economy, and you might see the stock market plummet the next day. So yes, they're very powerful, and you can argue that they're more powerful than what Congress can do. But in reality, to solve a recession, you do need both fiscal and monetary policy.
Okay.